pal of yours. Well, a couple of weeks ago, a new racing game was released, Xenon Racer, on the PC, Xbox, and PC. We were planning to review it on the week of release. It's been delayed by a couple of weeks, but we're finally getting to it now. And so I'm joined today by Kevin.
Hello.
And Tom.
Hello.
And we're going to discuss a bit about Xenon Racer action. Now, first thing we're going to talk about, I guess, is the gameplay. For those of you that have seen it, the gameplay is very similar to a kind of Ridge Racer. It's very much gone for a completely unrealistic arcade vibe. That's no bad thing. We like arcade stuff, but it really depends on if it's your bag or not. I guess a bit of gameplay chat then to kick off, a bit of game structure. Kevin, you've played more of this in terms of going through the game than any of us. Tell us a bit about Xenon Racer.
Yeah, so like you say, it very much takes cues from Ridge Racer, so you're sort of earning boost for drifting around turns. And in a game like this, you have to really drift around probably 90% of the turns because the cars tend to very much understeer. So you end up hitting the barriers if you don't drift. So it almost forces you to drift around. You build up your boost, which is like three sort of battery symbols on the bottom right of the screen there, which is the ERS, Energy Recovery System, as they call it. The game is set in 2030, so you've got all these futuristic cars. But yeah, the gameplay is very much basically you drift, you boost, you're competing with the AI and various other events such as elimination races. There's time trials as well. So it is a very basic thing that you would have seen many, many times over the years with arcade races. So it very much has a sort of 90s arcade flavour, doesn't it?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think first go I played it as a bit of Ridge Racer. I will say this, it varies very much in terms of the wheel. The wheel input, I'm just going to talk about this for a moment, is poorly optimised for the wheel. That's an understatement. There's no actual force feedback at all. The car is very loose when you're braking into corners. The car sometimes, the wheel in particular, doesn't slide. And it's not always clear why the car doesn't slide into some corners. There are some tracks and laps where you know that the car doesn't like to slide on that particular corner. Various reasons for it, but it doesn't feel very intuitive. And so I found that with the wheel, I could play it with the slower car, the green car that you start with. But as soon as we moved into faster cars, I just wasn't able to drive the car in anywhere near competitively compared to with a controller. So it's a bit of a missed opportunity there, because it's a funny game actually, because when you first play it feels a bit weird, and you're racing around this Tokyo circuit, and it's great. You know, it looks like something out of Scud Racer or something like that, and I didn't know whether I liked it or I didn't like it. I couldn't really make my mind up, and then when I finished playing it, I thought, I'd quite like to play it again. And it's had a strange addictive quality to it that once I started to get my head around the handling, and I did get closer to apexes, and I did start learning the courses, I got more and more into it in a funny way. So it certainly sort of grew on me in terms of the style that they'd put there. But it's a strange and quite limited handling model. There's no real dynamics with tyres or anything like that. And in that sense, it's sort of quite limited in what you can do. Tom, you've been playing a bit of this, more of an arcade gamer. What's your thoughts?
The drifting isn't really there enough for me, honestly. I found that I had to... When I got the cars set up properly, so when you unlock the ability to sort of change the parts, so you can change drift and acceleration and stuff. Once I was able to push the drift up past about halfway, it felt a bit more like an arcade racer. But anything lower than that, and I couldn't really get the cars to drift enough. I don't know if you guys found that.
Yeah, I mean, it took about an hour or so just to get my head around the handling. In the end, I sort of settled for keep tapping the accelerator method to get the drift going on. But yeah, originally there is a learning curve, a very steep learning curve with this game, getting the cars to drift.
It's quite unforgiving, isn't it? Like you can fall out of a drift really easily.
Yeah.
If you're not sort of going 90 degrees enough, then it will just pull you back forwards. I found I was crashing into a lot of walls as a result.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to another point. Really, the difficulty curve in the game is reasonably steep, to say the least, and I find that it gets more difficult, and then suddenly you have a couple of time trials which are quite challenging, and then you have Canada. It's like, oh my god, it's suddenly gone from like I was quite enjoying it and I recognised the difficulty setting to this is just damn near impossible. And I went through that a few times, and it turned out I just changed to another car in the end, and it made a huge difference. But one of the cars I could not compete in one of the cars that were there. And I think with the wheel, I quickly gave up after that. It was like, got through those first few races, and I thought, oh, this is impossible with the wheel.
Yeah.
So the difficulty is challenging. You want it to be, but one of the big problems with it is you never feel like you're racing anyone. You're either in last place or you're in first place.
Yeah.
You either overtake the entire field on one lap, first lap, and compete with the second two, or you're just on your own, and you never feel like there's so much rubber banding going on that you're just either, like you say, first or last. There's no real.
Yeah, there's no will-to-will action. There's
No.
no tension. There's sort of like you typically start a race, and like you say, you overtake everyone, or like you say, there might be one or two sort of front runners that you need to catch up to. But there's no real sort of tension in the racing action, is there? It's more like you versus the track rather than you versus the AI opponents.
Yeah, you can't race close to another car. You're zigzagging and bumping into them. You've got to avoid them, basically.
I was going to say, actually, you don't really want to race against other cars because of the damage, which I don't think is a good thing to have in an arcade racer personally, like an
No.
actual damage model like that, because you want it to be fast, and like you don't want to be slowed down for any reason. Plus, it just you don't want to. It makes you not want to race against other people.
Yeah, it's
Make you
interesting
hang back.
the damage, because if you do hit the barriers, you sort of stick to them and you slow down so much that it feels like that's punishment enough without the damage there in place. But once you've damaged to 100%, you reset on the track and you have to sort of start again from very low speed. So it's almost like a double whammy, isn't it? Whereas one of them would have done, the fact that you're getting two of them, the fact that you're getting slowed down by the barriers, and you're getting your car exploding or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. 'Cause it's not just one bit of damage, is it? When you're grinding along that wall, you're
Yeah.
constantly taking more and more damage.
And you're stuck to it as well, so it's quite annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it's, once I found the car that worked, I got my head around it. I then dominated that Canada race. I won it by some margin when I eventually did it. And then after that, I went through the game, and I never actually. I had one more challenging race. If people watch the stream, they'll have seen a race late on, a night race, which I found quite challenging. Did that in the end. That was quite tense. But then after that, got a new car, and nothing. It was literally these two races in the game. Every now and again, you'll come up against a difficult race. It's much more difficult than everything else.
And
Then you get other races that seem quite easy.
Progression is off, isn't it? Because we like challenging races, but we need to build up to that challenge. It needs to be progressively more difficult each event as you progress through the career mode. With this game, I feel it peaks too early. You have these harsh difficulty spikes, maybe a further away through the career mode, and then again, perhaps a little bit later.
Yes.
The progression is just slightly off, isn't it? And once you unlock the faster cars, they only handle worse. So you're really having to almost sort of reverse engineer these cars by upgrading them, and like Tom said, getting that handling bar as high as you can, above the halfway mark ideally, and sort of maybe reducing the speed as a result, because there is a trade-off usually between the handling and the top speed and acceleration. But the cars out of the box are largely horrible, aren't they, to drive? As an exception, there's like a nice white car you get early on, which is a pleasure to drive, and you get through about half of the game with it. But once you move up to the harder classes, I just feel that they're a little bit too difficult.
It varies. I personally quite like the green car you start with. It was very slidey. It slid well into corners. Then later in the game, towards the end, I got this red car that was really quick, like a Cylon. And that was amazing, the way it was sliding around corners, effortless to drive. It didn't have any of the problems you guys were mentioning about not sliding on corners. It slid every corner. It did exactly what you wanted it to do. So in that sense, it sort of varies. And I suppose as the game gets more difficult and faster, the handling comes a bit more into its own, in that it was designed for the faster cars. So there is that element to it. But the difficulty curve is definitely a bit all over the place. It never feels very fair. It feels you can drive as quick as you want to. The AI cars are living in a different world to you in terms of what they're able to do and how they race. They accelerate out of some corners super quick, and they're slow in other parts of the track, and it's very strange the way that works. The next thing I'll point out actually is the PC version, which I've been playing, is radically better than the PlayStation version, radically. I mean, I played the PlayStation version, it was reasonable fun, but when I went on the PC, loved it so much more just because the graphics were running at nice smooth 60 frames and the resolution was much higher. It just looked much better. Which brought me back to the PlayStation version and realised how much it needed more optimization.
Yeah.
It felt more like 720p than 1080p. There was a bit of blur here and there was 30 frames per second, and when you look at it graphically and you look at it from a physics perspective, there's not a lot going on. I feel the development team really should have done a bit more to optimize the game in terms of what was there. So I think optimization wise, there's definitely a lot of work to do, and it should have been better. I mean, talking of which, actually, Tom, you've seen the Switch version, haven't you? That does have some issues.
Oh dear. Well, not to be too harsh here, but I think we might have the world's worst. The world's worst. I think they've transferred it over to the Switch so badly. I think this will live on in infamy for a while. I think it's the worst port on the Switch we've seen so far.
Yeah, I mean, basically it has chronic pop-up on the Switch, which even the developers have come back with, admitted it's unacceptable, and they will be continuing to work on it. But there's no point in saying that when you submitted it and produced this product. I felt it needed more time on the Switch. I mean, there was no reason why they couldn't. If you look at a lot of games, look at Isle of Man TT. It's releasing on the Switch a year after the console version. They wanted more time to make the Switch version. Great. And I think that if they need more time to make the Switch version, take another month. It really doesn't affect the core sales. If they could release an optimized version on the Switch, it will do well. But as it happens, it's just going to give them a bad rep, and that's not good for them.
I feel like if I don't know how easy it would have been to do, but like back in the day, what they used to do, if you got like a game that was clearly not like going to run very well on a less powerful machine, they'd give it like a different graphical style. So it would have been interesting if they could put like some kind of even if they could do like a sort of simple cell shading thing to get it running better on the Switch, make it look a bit more stylized. That might have been a better idea, perhaps.
I just think that what they've got's fine. I just think that they've not optimized it well enough. It seems to me like it was just a bit rushed in terms of optimization.
I mean, it's a long way from it at the moment. It's not even running at 30 frames at the moment. I think it's running at about 20 currently.
They've not optimized it enough at all, and it's just not really ready to be shown yet. They've just rushed it out the door for whatever reason, and that's a bit of a shame, because I feel that it could have been much better. And I think if they had got the 60 frames on consoles, which there's no reason why it shouldn't, if they had got the 60 frames on the Switch, which I don't really see why it shouldn't. It's not got complex graphics. It looks like a Model 2, whatever it is, Model 3 arcade board. I think when you look at it and you look at what's the other racing game that came out, the future one? My mind's gone blank now.
Fast Racing RMX.
That's it. Fast Racing RMX looks stunning.
Yeah,
it's stunning on the Switch. So you can see what the Switch is capable of. It's comfortably capable of running games like that. And that had way more in the way of physics to it than Xenon Racer. So optimization leaves a lot to be desired on Xenon Racer. It looks a lot better on the PC. They'd have been better off releasing it on the PC now and then optimizing it, spending another month or two working on the PlayStation and then another month working on the Switch versions. As it is now, they've sort of damaged their rep a bit. I think to repair that, they've offered all the DLC for free recently, which is nice. We like that. So they're releasing 7 new tracks, I believe, on the way, new cars as well. So a lot to look forward to there. But then, what are we talking about? Gameplay then, it's a very arcade. It's not for everyone. You can find a car that suits you. You've got very limited customization options in there. You've got the photo mode as well, which is always a nice addition. There's no replay mode. There is a replay, but it doesn't have a proper TV replay setting. I think I think one of the big issues that you mentioned, Kevin, was the price, which is one of the big issues in terms of, is the package worth a full price?
Yeah, it is an issue. I mean, because this is only 3D Cloud's second game as well, so it's they've sort of They started off with All-Star Fruit Racing, which had amazing environments, I might add, which is pretty much what we're seeing again here with Xenon. But yeah, to charge full price with an indie title on your second ever title is a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, given the various sort of frame rate issues on the consoles. So, you know, there's a fair amount of content there. There are some nice elements with customization of the cars and stuff, but yeah, whether it's a full price title is questionable, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it feels like it's but if it was released at $24.99 launch title and it was a bit more complete, I think it would have said, you know, fair enough. I think as a full price game seems to be a bit pricey for the package that's there. There's a lot of good elements in there, and I like the style. It's got very much a Ridge Racer style, a cool intro, cool design. It's got a sleek look to it. Just there, here and there, it just needs to be a bit more finished. And as I say, with the price, given what it is, I think that full price seems to be pushing it a bit. I think as a medium price game, I think it would have been better as a launch game, and I think it's a better game to get when it goes down a bit. You know, as we've said, $19.99, would be all right. But $49.99 or $39.99 is too expensive when you look at some of the other games that are on the market.
Yeah.
In terms of what you actually get in terms of bang for buck. So, yeah, I think so far I've found Xenon Racer to be enjoyable in its own way. It's got a strangely addictive quality. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I have genuinely enjoyed playing it. There have been times when I've been really in the zone and enjoying it. It's very different from the simulation stuff I put a lot of time into. But at the same time, I recognise that there's not enough there. Some tracks feel bland and unfinished in comparison to, say, the Tokyo circuits, which are head and shoulders the best circuits in the game. And like, some of the airport ones, for example, a bit dull. It's funny, I saw a developer say that he'd never seen Scud Racer, which I found almost hard to believe when you've got an airport track in Scud Racer as well. That's very similar. So, yeah, final thoughts then, Kevin, first. Final thoughts on Xenon Racer.
Yeah, I'd say that be warned of the sort of difficulty curve in this game. You will need to invest maybe an hour or two for it to really click, because the drifting system is a little bit on the sort of clumsy side. But it very much depends on what car you're driving. If you can pick a good car, tune it so it's got a high handling statistic, there is a lot of fun to be had here, and competing on the leaderboards as well is particularly fun as well, I found. But it's a game where it has harsh difficulty spikes throughout the career, so you may need to sort of work through a different web of events to avoid certain events that you get stuck on as well. So it all depends on how much you've unlocked. There are sort of customization elements that you have to unlock via playing online, so it's almost forcing you into playing online in a sense to get the best out of your vehicles. If you're happy to do that, then sure, that's certainly recommended. But if you're not keen on online play, you'll have a car that perhaps won't be as good as it could be, which is a shame. But overall, for a second effort from 3D Clouds, improvements, I would say, over All-Star Fruit Racing. Sometimes I feel as if they've gone too much on the environmental detail at the sort of sacrifice of frame rate. So maybe if they can just tone back certain elements visually just to get a better smoother frame rate, I think they're certainly be onto something there. It'd be interesting to see how they develop, because it's only the second ever game. I think they've done a decent job. I think the developer has certainly a lot of potential in the future. We just have to sort of keep an eye on it. But so far, a decent effort, Xenon Racer. A little bit overpriced. Like to see how this developer evolves, but yeah, they're certainly on the right line with Xenon Racer. It's an improvement over All-Star Fruit Racing, which is their first title. So excited to see what they can come up with in the future.
Tom, your thoughts on Xenon Racer? What do you think?
So I don't want to sound so negative on the game. I didn't hate the game, but there was something. Just the overall game just felt really bland to me. I can't put my finger on it. It feels a bit confused almost. It's almost like they're trying to mash something like Burnout and Wipeout together in terms of the style. You're kind of going for that futuristic look, but with the sort of 90s house music. That's not necessarily a problem. That's just a personal thing. I don't really sort of dig that kind of style. Like I said, the handling was a bit off for me. I haven't played I think I haven't got an arcade racer that I want since probably Split Second came out, and that was that was like 70 years ago or so. I don't know what it is. There's no, they can't get the right balance between handling and speed. A lot of these games, they just go purely for speed and then think about handling afterwards.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree with all of those comments. I think, as I was saying earlier about some tracks, they're more lonely. They just seem a bit more bland.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think like a lot of those like Sega arcade racing games, and actually Split Second was a good example, had a lot of background animation as well. So it wasn't just the tracks looked nice. Like in Daytona 2, you'd have like roller coasters going over the track and stuff, all that kind of thing. Like they've almost gone for like half realistic, half unrealistic here. And I feel like they should have just gone like all in and went totally unrealistic. The tracks also felt a bit flat. I feel like it would have been sort of more fun if they'd had almost like if you were going to go all the way, just go for like F-Zero style tracks or something like that.
Yeah, I think I think you're absolutely right. I think there's definitely ideas where, as a small development team, they're limited in terms of what they can do. They've gone for a certain style. They've put a lot of effort, I felt, into the Tokyo tracks, which was their vision. And some of the other tracks aren't nearly as interesting or adventurous. I think the fact that the racing isn't close. Imagine playing in an arcade game where you saw no other cars. They were just miles ahead or miles behind. No, the whole point of racing is the fact that you're bumping in with all these other cars and you're racing with them around the circuit, and it feels intense. You feel like you're part of something. I found in this game it was quite difficult racing with the AI, and there's definitely a certain loneliness the game has to it, where you don't feel like you're part of something. It doesn't have a soul to it in that way.
I have to admit, I didn't know it was their second game, so for that alone, it is promising. But yeah, I think they've depending on if they keep doing arcade races, I'd be interested to see what they'd.
Yeah, I think they've learned a lot from doing this. I think it's very interesting to see all the extra parts and what they could develop and build in the future. We don't know what the limitations are, but either way, I think it's a fun little game. I think at a budget price, it's certainly much better than at full price. And we'll wait to see if they can optimize it and add various elements. And that's it, viewers, for our chat on Xenon Racer. If you have any questions, do pop them into the chat below. Do like and subscribe and all that jazz. And no doubt we'll discuss this and other games, of course, on our upcoming podcast to come as well. But that's it from me for now, and from Tom and Kevin. And there'll be more from us very soon.